Humans have always had an impact on the environment that they live in, but now, more than ever, we're changing the world we live in, from deforestation to urbanization. Is on the balance of matter and energy in the ecosystem. So the amount of sunlight that an area receives often determines its productivity. So if we look at places near the equator, they often have more productive ecosystems with greater biodiversity than areas away from the equator. So if we look at the North and the South Pole. Moisture also plays a significant role in the productivity of an ecosystem because where we have deserts near the equator, they're often low productive ecosystems as opposed to places like the Brazilian rainforest and the rainforests in Africa. We see these productivity rates often expressed as energy or biomass. So these areas of the world have higher biomass than areas near the poles. Inside our own bodies, we maintain something known as homeostasis. So this is a balance of chemicals and hormones and body temperature and water balance. And to do this, our body uses energy, and so does the earth. In 1979, James Lovelock proposed the Gaia hypothesis, which is homeostasis on a global level. So, in essence, the Gaia hypothesis suggests that the Earth is self-regulating. So, the Earth is able to maintain its own appropriate water balance, nutrient balance, and temperature. So life itself plays a large role in the balance we see in the biosphere. So we have a certain amount of producers, herbivores, consumers, predators, decomposers. And if left alone, largely the Earth would be able to maintain this balance, except for any extraordinary events. The composition of the atmosphere, for instance, would be very different if living things hadn't modified it through cellular respiration and photosynthesis. We wouldn't see that balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide that we do that is easily able to support life. If we had a large number of volcanoes and less plants, we would see higher amounts of sulfur in the atmosphere, leading to acid rain, leading to the destruction of more plants. So everything needs to be in perfect balance for life to continue to exist. Some of the sediments that make up our geological features come from biological sources. So again, that phosphorus and the rocks can come from deceased animal and plant species. Stromatolites, for example, are formations of sedimentary rock that are composed partly of cellular debris from organisms. So there's debris from organisms in those stromatolites. The early stromatolite layers show that there was large amounts of oxygen trapped in the iron oxides that are in those stromatolites. So we had a lot more oxygen in the atmosphere. Later layers indicate that the oxygen was no longer being trapped. It had moved out of the oceans and into the atmosphere, allowing for life to exist in terrestrial environments. Scientists for decades have been trying to replicate the Earth's biosphere. There was Biosphere 1 as well as Biosphere 2, where they had a self-contained system, where they had plants and animal species inside a dome where then nothing except sunlight would ever enter or leave. These experiments, however, were never able to be successful because our biosphere is extremely complex. And even as a scientific species, we're still not able to understand the intertwined systems that govern life on Earth. NASA has programs such as the Advanced Life Support Program, which are being studied to see if plants may be grown in a space colony for food and oxygen. So, if you think about any Hollywood movies that have life on Mars, this is something that has already been created in those movies. These programs are also looking for ways to recover usable resources from waste. So, again, I think it was the movie called The Martian, where Matt Damon makes compost out of human waste so they can grow the potatoes on that planet. The Canadian Arctic is a place where they're using to study this because there often isn't a abundance of soil and sunlight in these locations. So they're using it to stimulate the surface of Mars. And so scientists from NASA are trying to study what factors need to be in place for a sustainable manned mission to other planets. How would we be able to create food in a self-contained system? Now, when I say the Earth is generally able to maintain its own balance without any outside influence, this is where human interference ends up coming in. Through technology, humans have gained this ability to significantly change our surroundings. So between pavement and mining and fossil fuel combustion and water treatment, we have sometimes caused a disruption in the flow of matter and energy. So we dam rivers, we dig up native grasses, and we plant crops. Now, these are things that we need to do for our survival. So to have consistent water on the prairies to provide water for people who live in cities to drink and for people who farm to grow crops as well. We can't necessarily eat prairie grasses as effectively as we can crops. Crops provide much higher nutrient per gram food sources than grasses. So to feed the amount of people that we have living in the world, these are necessary choices that we've made. But at the same time, they interrupt the delicate balance of natural ecosystems. So we're looking always into ways to reduce our environmental impact. So sometimes when it comes to farming, this is looking at windrows to reduce erosion, to have much more effective irrigation systems if you're in an irrigation location, to grow crops that can survive in our environment here without needing irrigation. In cities, this is things such as green roofs and green belts and urban landscaping that allows for water to be absorbed where it's fallen instead of running off into river and water treatment plants so that it can maintain itself in the environment where it's needed. So, developing also alternate sources of energy so that we can reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that we put into the atmosphere, which is changing the way the atmosphere functions, is an important part of reducing the impact we have on our planet. Now, every year that moves forward, we're moving closer and closer to trying to have a net zero carbon economy, which is either we don't produce any carbon or we balance the carbon that we produce with carbon sinks that we're creating, whether natural or artificial. We also need to reconsider how we use land and resources to prevent damage to the ecosystems around us. So, what type of mining do we need to do? What type of drilling do we need to do? What type of farming do we need to do so that we can maintain the ecosystems around us as intact as possible? So, when we're looking at humans' role in the environment, it's about preserving the natural balance as much as possible while still providing humanity the resources it needs to survive. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and I look forward to coming into your classrooms again. Bye.
If you enjoyed this video, check out our website online.plrd.ab.ca and visit us on Facebook, Prairieland Online Academy. You can find out all that's going on with Prairieland Online Academy.